Hey everyone, how's it going? Tekno here, and I hope you're doing well. Today, I'm going to be bringing you guys another Warframe guide, and this time, it's on Gara, the Glass Queen. I know, I've done a Gara build before, but it's a different name. That one was different, and it was focusing on tankiness as well as melee combat. Now this one is the Glass Queen, and it's focusing entirely on something different, which is her mass Vitrify and her Lash, so doing widespread damage to all enemies in the area. Now before I get into anything, I wanted to shout out one of my commenters, Zoso Redwood. He's the guy that actually gave me the idea for this build and let me know how awesome and viable this could actually be. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys exactly how I build Gara as well as her melee weapon, a couple requirements that you guys are going to need, as well as the damage and gameplay to expect, and I'll show you that in the gameplay portion at the end. So without further ado, let's get into her abilities. So here's Gara's 4 abilities, same as they were before: Shattered Lash, Splinter Storm, Spectral Rage, and Mass Vitrify. They also added her passive ability down here. She had this all along, but they simply added it so now you know exactly what it is. In our previous build, we focused on melee combat with the ability Splinter Storm to maximize effectiveness with that. In this build, we're not going to be maximizing effectiveness with this or focusing on it at all. It still gives you the functionality of the 90% damage reduction if you find yourself in a tight spot, but it only lasting 16 seconds means we're not really focusing on this. The first ability we're going to look at is Shattered Lash. Now, I shouted out Zoso in the beginning because he helped me realize that Shattered Lash is affected by melee mods as well as your melee weapon. And that made sense to me because this seems like a blade or a whip type ability. And so I tested it and it worked fantastically. But he also told me that Mass Vitrify was affected by the same mods and melee weapons. And so that got me thinking, and I had to do some testing for myself. So I tested a few different weapons as well as no weapon and different mods as well as different mobs to see if Mass Vitrify was affected, and not only is it affected, it's greatly affected by the melee weapon as well as the mods. So that is what we're going to be focusing on, is the first and the last ability. With that in mind, we're going to be focusing entirely on range and strength when it comes to mods. So let's get into that now. Here we go for mods. So again, these mods are focusing on range and strength. I'll tell you guys a couple things that you can change around if you find yourself needing to. This is a 3-forma build, so keep that in mind. So for aura, obviously we're going for Steel Charge. This is the strongest aura that we could put here by far. It's definitely necessary if you can get it. You know, that's definitely good. It's not a hard mod to obtain, so I'll definitely recommend it. As far as everything else goes, you're going to want to keep most of everything, or at least a general idea, you know, the same philosophy in your build where you're maximizing range and strength. I tried to keep them as balanced as possible. But the two things that I like to change out and change between is especially flow and stretch. If you feel like you need a couple more meters on your abilities, then stretch is definitely good, and flow is just really convenient to have. And the last one is primed continuity. I like to have the extra duration so that I can use Splintered Storm, and I can have an increased wall duration when I need it. It's a good mod to have, but again, you can swap it out if you need more strength or more vitality if you feel like you're getting low. This is a squishy kind of Warframe, so if you need more health, that's definitely understandable. Now with the mods out of the way, I'm going to show you guys the last requirement, which is a good melee weapon. Your primary and secondary don't matter so much, but your melee weapon is pretty paramount in this build. So here I'm using the Guandao, but any two-hander that you have a lot of strong mods for is definitely recommended. So the Orthos, Cindo, I know a lot of people got Cindo Prime for the Twitch Prime, so that would be a good option, or War. So a lot of people have a lot of these weapons. That's just a couple of my recommendations. Any two-hander will work well though. So once we check out the mods here, use any stance that you want, that doesn't really matter. What we're focusing on is putting out as much damage into the weapon as possible. So as you can see, a few of my mods are not maxed out, so with a few more forma you could optimize this build even more than I already have. All of these mods I would definitely recommend, except for maybe Condition Overload. I have that in case an enemy that I do damage is already status affected. It's not something we're going to go out of our way to proc. So with all the damage mods in mind, of course we're going to go with primed pressure point. You can take pressure point if that's all you have, but obviously more damage is better. And since this weapon is a slash heavy weapon, we're going to focus on buzzkill as well as jagged edge to maximize the amount of slash damage we can output. Spoiled strike for obviously 100% more damage, and we're not going to be using this weapon, so the attack speed isn't really a big deal to us. I also like to use Fever Strike, Shocking Touch, and North Wind. I tested it without any of these elemental mods, so I didn't know if they affected it or not, and they definitely affect the overall damage. Without these, I was only doing about 7,000 to 6,000 damage with the Mass Vitrify, and with them I can do over 10,000. So they definitely help out a ton, and I would recommend getting at least 3 of them because they're definitely worth the drain. Now that is everything that you guys are going to need, as well as how I build the 2 things that you guys are going to need in this build. We're going to head over to the gameplay section, so I hope this has helped you out so far, and I'll see you guys in just a second. So welcome everyone to the gameplay portion and the last part of the video. In this first clip, this is one of 2, and I just simply wanted to show you how big of a change the most recent hotfix was. So that's right, you're seeing right here, this is the ability Mass Vitrify. If you're not familiar with it, usually it would only cover the top portion of the glass wall, but they changed it so now it covers everything at your level as well as everything below your level. So as you can see, the glass is raining down and creating a 3-story wall here instead of what used to be a 1-story wall. So that is one of the biggest changes that they made in one of the most recent hotfixes, and they made Gara that much better with this hotfix. So this is going to be the rest of the gameplay here on IO. I played Gara here for a little while just to show you guys because I think it's a pretty good impression of how big Mass Vitrify actually is. As you can see here, it does cover quite a big distance. And the thing is, I'm going to give you a few recommendations and tips. And the very first one is to not play here. Funny enough, you do not want to play against Corpus as a mass AoE frame for this very reason. The enemy that I just shot there, the Magic Nullifier, is someone that you do not want to run into as a mass AoE Warframe. And that's the same for all AoE Warframes, and this is no different. One touch of the orb on your wall and it shatters. So that's not something you want to happen. It'll waste your energy and waste your time. So that does lead into my next point, which is energy. This build and this Warframe in general do take somewhat of a lot of energy, just because in order to cast Mass Vitrify, even with 135 efficiency like I have, that is still going to cost you around 50 energy, which isn't a lot but isn't a little, especially if you're not running flow. And so if you are running this build, then you're probably going to want to run on a smaller map like Hydron, where you might not run into energy problems as much. Or another really good recommendation is you're going to want to go into the Zeneric lens tree. It's not as good as it once was, but it still allows you to get some extra energy from orbs. And a very good ability I found is the one that allows you to get a energy aura when you dash in operator form. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, the Warframe still functions just fine. This is just a few tips if you guys are running low on energy and want to find ways to remedy it. Unfortunately, you can't use Energy Siphon with this build. You can try, it'll just do significantly less damage than you're seeing here. And as far as damage goes, when I am using Mass Vitrify with an energy conversion, it is doing between 20 and 60,000 damage depending on the enemy, as well as depending on if I am using energy conversion or not. It doesn't seem that the whip itself, when it breaks the wall, contributes to any extra damage, so you don't need to worry about energy conversioning your whip that does break the wall. Your whip and your wall are actually pretty comparable as far as damage, which is really nice, so that you can use them in different areas when you are close range. I like to use the Shattered Lash. As you can see in just a second, I do use it to pretty great effect. If you hold down Shattered Lash, it does turn into a whip and does a frontal cone, and that, as well as the other one where it's just a straight blade, both do around 20 to 30,000 damage and pretty much one-shot nearly every enemy I've come across. So this build is very fun to use. It's a lot of AoE. It's completely different than the other build that I posted for Gara, which is the only reason I did post it. I don't ever like posting videos that I find useless or that you guys might not need. So I hope this guide did help you guys a lot. If it did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I do put out videos pretty constantly about stuff that I hope helps people. And if it does, then thanks guys. I really appreciate your support in the comments and your likes. The only reason I was able to make this video is because of you guys. So thank you. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.